saw him as a depressing sight. Joyless, unanimated, with a damaged character and a broken spirit. During his lifetime, I saw him as a burden rather than an asset to my grandmother, as she waited on him, pampered him. My mother, I recall, resented this treatment, for she contended that he didn't do his share for the family. She recalled a life of living with a father who, when not on an alcoholic binge, suffered from frequent seizures, which had to be endured by the rest of the family. My uncle, on the other hand, did not seem resentful, but I often thought he must have been disappointed in a father incapable of playing a simple bat and ball game or merely offering a positive life outlook. My grandmother said it wasn't always like this. She said my grandfather was once a vibrant and handsome Pullman porter, a hard worker who wanted only the best for his family. When I was younger, I liked to do puzzles from the newspaper where you find words hidden among randomly arranged letters. Since my grandfather spent most of his time sitting alone, he would sometimes complete these puzzles together. We would sometimes complete these puzzles together, and eventually he began saving them in a neat stack and worked on completing them himself. In the springtime, I saw him take brown paper bags and make kites for the kids down the street. He once made a pen for my pet rabbit. He often talked of feelings in his missing leg and would shudder and make comments like, "They must be working on my leg today." Years later, when I was home on breaks from college, the sight of my grandfather was horrible. He seemed useless and frail. He had lost more of life's joy. He seemed angry and sad. The pain was obvious, and he was sometimes furious and irate, mean and spiteful. I often have dreams about my grandfather. Before his death, I had a dream that he was in his old house in a coffin, open with the body in full view, dead but alive somehow. After his death, another dream revealed him through a doorway, sitting in his wheelchair, looking feeble, yet in good spirits. He seemed to have a newfound joy, laughing and joking with male friends. When Eileen Wilson presented my family with the facts that this man was indeed CAL-3, a human nuclear guinea pig, I wondered, could this be the reason, the origin, the root cause of this depressed character that I considered all along to be my grandfather? He lived over 40 years without a zest for life and with a pain I imagine was without equal. For I understand that the reality of life for the African-American man in the 1940s was already a predetermined bleak one, dictated by the white man's tyrannical power of economics, politics, and to a certain degree, basic freedom. Being born a black male was already a handicap. Having a limited education was a further handicap. Then to add a physical handicap, due to being basically tricked into donating a body limb for science. With all of this in mind, I now understand how alcohol could relieve his reality, how depression and schizophrenia could take control of his life, how his feelings of hopelessness shattered such a promising future. In my most recent dream, I saw my grandfather with both legs, standing with confidence and strength of character I never saw in real life. He had a young appearance. He had a look of joy on his face, and he seemed content. This statement is signed April D. Whitfield, granddaughter of Elmer Allen, March 15, 1995. Good afternoon. My daughter, April Whitfield, and the other survivors of Elmer Allen are determined that the truth about his plutonium injection and subsequent leg amputation be made a part of the public record. We continue to be appalled by the apparent attempts at cover-ups, the inferences that the nature of the times, the 1940s, allowed scientists to conduct experiments without getting a patient's consent or without mentioning risk. We contend that my father was not an informed participant in the plutonium experiment. He was asked to sign his name several times while a patient at the University of California Hospital in San Francisco. Why was he not asked to sign his name permitting scientists to inject him with plutonium? Why was his wife, who was college trained, not consulted in this matter? It is my hope that history will not be rewritten in committees who claim that they do not understand the actions of the scientists of the 1940s, those who claim that a poor and disenfranchised African-American man could not be hoodwinked by his doctors. I hope you will understand that just as Jewish fathers were placed in the ovens at Auschwitz, my father, Elmer Allen, was placed in his own private oven here in the United States of America. He was left there for 44 years, and the scientists occasionally took a peek inside to see if he was still alive. His survivors are pledged to tell the truth about this experiment for the next 50 or even 100 years if necessary, so that future generations will have more than lies, half-truths, and inconclusive reports when attempting to recount this real-life horror story.
Thank you.
I thank you, but I didn't know I had 10 minutes because I had a lot more to say. But I thank you.
We have a few more. Thank you very much, Mrs. Bell. Please don't leave us. I'm sure there are questions from committee members, or if you have a few more comments that you would like to make, please feel free to make them.
Well, I just wanted to address the report of the UCSF ad hoc fact-finding committee. There are so many inconsistencies in here. I hope you all will look at them and look at them again and again, and pay attention to the biographies of the scientists involved and how they seem to all have some type of connection. I believe I know what happened, and I hopefully all of you will come to some conclusion that these folk were wrong.
Mm-hmm. Lois.
Thank you for your testimony. Did your father ever express knowledge of the fact that he was an experimental subject, and more importantly, did he tell you then what he was told before this was done or after it was done?
It is my feeling that my father had no idea that he was being used as an experimental subject in something this important. It's really hard to explain because most of the things that my father said, nobody paid attention to. It was known, and my mother explained to us about his initial accident when he was thrown from the train, and it was always our contention that the leg had to be amputated because surgery would not permit it to be healed properly. So we grew up, my brother and I grew up thinking that the leg was amputated because it could not be repaired. My father often said things that didn't make sense, and usually it was when he was inebriated. He would say things like that he knew that the doctors that were working on him to know what they were doing. It was his contention that they were young people, and knowing that UCSF was a teaching hospital, we always thought he was talking about the interns that didn't know what they were doing. But he says, when you find somebody that starts running in and out, and he recalled that they were running in and out of his room at a certain time, that perhaps they didn't know what they were doing and had made some type of mistake.